The following program is brought to you by the 0DB Movie Podcast feed. Hey, and welcome back to the solo set here on the 0DB Podcast feed. So for the solo set, I'm doing a little different. I'm doing Netflix programming, if you will, and for this first series of Netflix programming, I'm doing a sci-fi fantasy show called Altered Carbon. We are currently on episode 4, which is what I'm going to talk about today. But first, I wanted to remind you guys why I'm doing Netflix series as opposed to the other shows that I do with John or Claudia, where we talk about film. With John, it's usually like older anthology type stuff or big films like that. And me and Claudia try to get into we'll do older films too, but a little bit more modern or different genres. Right now, me and her are doing Oscar nomination movies and Oscar movies. So you guys can check that out too here on YouTube or on podcasts. There's Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and Podomatic. You can also go to 0dbpodcast.com and see all that. So anyway, getting back to this. This is episode 4 of the Netflix series Altered Carbon. And this episode is called Force of Evil. So kicking right into Force of Evil, we open on Kovac in that hospital-like thing where he got basically knocked out with that syringe, and he woke up in this medical-type facility. So now, in this episode, we find out that this medical facility is it's the Way Clinic, or the Y Clinic, WEI, and what they're doing is what they call virtual interrogation. What are they doing? A virtual interrogation program, which specializes in data extraction for unwilling subjects. So that's torture, right? It's definitely torture, and it's a hell of a lot of torture, which you will find out in this series, especially in this episode. So we open on Kovac in this place, and basically how the show has been going, it's been cutting a lot. I feel like as we're getting, now we're in episode 4, the cuts are less, they're meatier in between, but they're still cutting back in between things. So we got Kovac in this Y Clinic, and we cut back to Elliot and Poe back at the Raven, and Elliot has got his side story of how Poe is trying to rehabilitate his daughter Lizzie, which is in the VR world. So they have this set up this old tube-looking TV where Elliot apparently can watch his daughter Lizzie in that VR world that she's stuck in or has been put in for safekeeping, and that Poe is going to start trying to rehabilitate her. So we go back and forth to that. Meanwhile, you stick in a third cut in, and those are basically flashbacks to when Kovac was in that rebel group with Kel. So basically, you start to get the gist of what's this going to be now, because now she has got her soldiers and she is training them on virtual interrogation programs and how to get through them or how to get out of them or how to beat them and how to deal with them, right? So now you're like, okay, now I'm getting it. He's starting to get tortured while he's remembering how to not die, because in these virtual interrogation programs, you can just keep dying. It's not really happening, but they say the pain is so real that you feel it. Your body feels it. Some people die of a heart attack from it happening so much. So now we're kind of doing that, right? Where we're doing 3 cuts back and forth to that. Now, of course, we got to go to Ortega at some point, right? So when we do, we find out in that clinic that Kovac no longer has the tracker on him because Ortega's been tracking him, and they show him, and he didn't even know he was being tracked. So they kind of like, hey, you got a cop issued tracker here. Well, guess what? Once you came in this building, whoever's tracking you or is going to track you is not going to see you anymore. So now we know the tracker is gone. So, of course, we cut to Ortega. She's investigating the vision she had when she was at the party, the meth party. She thought she saw somebody, and when she asked her partner to check her eye camera, she's in this room with like her partner and some other like technology geek guy that's looking through all her footage, and they're trying to figure out what happened, and like they come to the realization that whoever this guy is she saw somehow is getting all his footage wherever he goes erased. So, the tech nerd guy calls him a ghost walker. So now you're interested in that because you're like, oh, that was what I saw was the same Asian guy that I saw that was filming Kovac and Miriam doing it as the Fly AI, right? So this guy we still don't know yet. He's got to be somebody. So meanwhile, while Kovac is being interrogated, quote unquote, it turns out to be Dimmy the twin. Now, Dimmy the twin, we found out in the first episode, was the guy that came into the AI hotel to basically extract Kovac, and the hotel and Kovac ended up killing him and all his cronies. Apparently, this guy calls himself Dimmy the twin because there's two of them, and I guess they always either look like each other or are coming in and out of sleeves like each other. Either way, they're kind of both screwed in the head because they've been in so many sleeves that like it's kind of cool, the effects. They show like the faces changing because he's like, I'm a little messed up. It's a Russian guy. So that's kind of cool. So now we find out it's him and Kovac in this interrogation room. He's the guy. So this guy keeps calling him. He keeps calling him Riker. And Kovac is like, who the heck is Riker? I'm not Riker. I'm Kovac. And the guy's like, no. You're Riker. And he's just like, I wish I knew who Riker was, but I don't know. So you need to stop. He's like, no, you're Riker. Riker's a cop. That's why you had this cop-issued tracker. So you must be a cop. So now we're going back and forth with Quell training on the VR torture and that, which is pretty much, probably for the 2/3 of this episode, it's pretty much the torture, cutting in and out of Kel training him on torture. And then meanwhile, you got little side stories with Ortega and Elliot, but mostly Ortega. So the interrogation continues, keeps calling him Riker, lets him know he's a cop. Kovac is confused. Meanwhile, you got some little, like, the two idiots that work the whole interrogation room. This is the only cheap part about it. Like, they're doing this, like, this stupid banter. Like, hey, I'm going to go bang some chick. Hey, you're not supposed to say that, like, HR is going to go, whatever. It's not even worth talking about because it's nothing. Although, you do see next to the interrogation tables, you see the body of that girl that fell in the last episode. I guess they're doing an autopsy on her or just basically cutting her apart because they're like putting her intestines in buckets, cutting her limbs off. You don't even know what the hell's going on with that. It feels like they're trying to get rid of the evidence or you don't know what, but they keep going back to the torture, which is the main part of it. So basically, like, Kovac is so smart at this VR manipulation that he gets answers out of Dimmy the twin where he's basically like, the Dimmy the twin basically gives a confession where he's just like, look, I know you're a cop. I know you're a dirty cop because I'm the one that planted the evidence that got you put away. What? Right? What? So now Kovac is even like, what? What are you talking about? And by the way, the torture, like, if you're not good with really, like, gory stuff, this torture is torture to, like, watch. Because, like, the effects are pretty good. They're not, I guess they are graphic, but they don't get super graphic. But what they show you, like, they'll show you about to do something, and then they'll show what he looks like afterwards. You should watch it to see this stuff because I don't want to get into it because that kind of spoils it too. So, meanwhile, what we learned in this episode when Elliot and Poe were bickering in the beginning because Elliot doesn't think that this is going to help his daughter. Poe is dressing up in like a Halloween costume and a Dia de los Muertos decorations, and he's like, look, liven up. I love Halloween. I love Dia de los Muertos. Elliot's like, you're not even human. And he's like, well, in my years of being AI, I learned to be lonely, and I like these things, Kind of cool little side stories that like builds up Poe and it builds up Elliot a little bit because you don't really know much about them. So meanwhile, like I said, it's Dia de los Muertos. Ortega is like at the station. This is obviously set up where she's at the station and they bring in some like thug and, tall, bald, tattooed, like biker looking dude. And basically like they put him out, they knock him out, however they do it, unconscious. And they just leave him there. And she's like, hey, what are you going to do with his body? And they're like, put him on ice. It's the holidays. We're not coming back. Do whatever you want with him. So she brings him down to like the place where they put you on ice. Because when you're a prisoner, that's what you do. You're put on ice. Your stack is taken away. And you're whatever in there for how many years you got your sentences for. So it's Dia de los Muertos. Ortega... They must do this to set up what happens next, because Ortega basically goes home where they're having a Dia de los Muertos party, right? It's Abuelita, her partner, all her like nephews and nieces and family. Everyone's over, right? So what Ortega does is she brings, not Abuelita, was it her mom, Mamita, but she brings her Abuelita, who is dead. She brings our Abuelita home in the body of that thug, that guy with the bald tattoo dude. And I got to say, that was a good chuckle to take me away from the crazy interrogation stuff, because good job on the actor, because he was like totally huge, tattooed, like he's got the earrings. He just looks like a total like crazy badass biker thug guy. But now he's talking like this in his Abuelita. So like, it's kind of cool because now Ortega and Abuelita are having little conversations about life and death. So they kind of brings this little cool spin on it, on like bringing people back from the dead. Literally, she brings her home and she tells her mom, she's like, here, happy Dia de los Muertos. I brought Abuelita. So now the mom is completely annoyed because she doesn't believe in re-sleeving because it's a whole religious thing. So now I feel like we have this like... I'm not going to say holy trinity of like character circles, but it kind of is that, because now you got torture with death, you've got Quell training to avoid the torture, but you got Ortega with Dia de los Muertos bringing her mom back. So they keep going with this whole like God, no God, re-sleeve, not re-sleeve, being spun up is what it's called when you're brought back up in another body. And FYI, the police are really into this, or most people are, because when you're murdered, you're brought back and you can like call out your murderer or whatever, tell what happened. Her mother, Mama, and apparently her abuelita or her grandfather, abuelita's husband. There's a whole faction, the religious faction, of like where you basically sign a waiver and you are, because of your religious beliefs, you don't get spun up again. So the mom's already a little pissed because she spun up grandma, and is not cool with that, especially when it's this like giant dude. And Abuelita, by the way, is totally partying. She's like, look, I was conservative my whole life, and now that I'm back and I'm here for one day, I'm partying. So she's drinking, she's cursing. She even goes to the bathroom and like she like calls out like, yo, I'm peeing standing up, because she's in a man's body, which is really funny. So now I feel like, as opposed to explaining what's going on, that's basically what's going on throughout this whole thing. For the 2/3, Act 1 and 2, it's this circle or triangle of constant, that whole moral dilemma of, like, they say there's no God, but then they say these meths are the new gods because they live forever. And like, maybe that's the way it should be. And like her father is there, and like her uncle is kind of like, well, if it's God's will, so then, and then like Ortega's like, well, it was God's will for us to be able to find that technology to make the stacks. So it's the whole religious and moral and ethic thing that's swirling right now. In my notes, I wrote a lot of like circles and arrows and triangles going in the circle of like God, no God, re-sleeving, no sleeves, sleeves. And then you still have the other one of like, while there's still torture going on, he's fighting it. He's going back to his memories of teaching him how to fight this. So there's basically like the three stories. I got Kovac, Quell, Ortega, but I also have Poe and Elliot. So that's four, but there's always three happening, right? One will drop out and they'll add the other story. So now that's the vibe we got of this. Full disclosure, I watched the whole thing and I'm into it. And I got to say that, up to this episode 4, I was still having my doubts. But I got to say, if you get to 4, get past 4, because after 4, it definitely gets better and it definitely gets crazier and you're definitely hooked more. Like the first 4, I was kind of like, all right, I'm going to do this. I got this. I'm going to push through this. Not that I didn't like it, but I had some thoughts about the pace that some of the characters were going. But after this episode, I mean, like, just the torture thing alone, I was just like, holy crap, this is getting serious. I also have a circle with God, no God, religious, and meth, So now we get that. So now we're in Act 3, right? And right before Act 3, what sets up Act 3, which is really cool, is now Kovac is really, really, really getting tortured with some crazy stuff, like, I'm just going to say, like, torches and these weird lizard things that go in your belly button, whatever. I'm not going to get in there. But he gets to the point where Kovac stops his own heart. And what's really cool about that is that it comes to a head where you see when Kovac was in training with Kel, they all got put into VR torture and they all had to get out. He got put into VR torture with her. And in this VR torture, I think they fell in love or something. Because the way Kovac got out of the AIs, he ended up kissing her and it threw her off. And she was like, you can't do that to everybody. It's never going to work that way. But he didn't care. He wanted to do it to her. So then they kind of flip forward in other kind of the future type stuff where you see that they are in love. So they do have a relationship. And he does this VR thing with her while she's talking to him how to get out of it. He takes his heart out. He like rips his own heart out and he gives it to her. And he's just like, here, this is the best I can do. This is what I want to. I want to give you my heart physically. That's how much I love you. So now you're like, holy crap, this is like super love. Like these two are super intense. But where is she? She's not around anymore. It's only these memories. So now I'm like, all right, that's probably why he's super cranky too, because he probably misses her and she's constantly in his head. So basically by giving him in his VR mind, by taking his heart out and giving it to her, in real life, he stops his heart. So now the doctors that are monitoring him, those two bobos, they're just like, holy shit, he just stopped his own heart. So they bring him back to life because they don't want him to die. They're interrogating him. So they kind of bring him out of it. And Kovac is just like, you guys effed up really, really bad. You guys messed up really, really bad. Do you know who I am? And then he starts telling him about his past. He's like, I'm a SeaTac officer, which is like, I don't know, I guess you could probably say like, I'm FBI or something like that. And you have messed with the wrong guy. You guys think I'm someone else, but I'm in someone else's sleeve of who you think I am. So he was like, this is his badassery. He was just like, whoever is like, who's going to live? Because whoever lets me out is going to live and everyone else is going to die. Because you're all going to die. So you're like, oh, wow, this guy's threatening pretty good. But to make that long story short, Kovac gets up and he F's shit up really, really bad. Totally worth watching and not even describing because I can't describe it. So Kovac wreaks havoc on this place. As he's walking out, Elliot is walking in because he was looking for him. He realized he's missing. He's walking in with one of those cyberpunk dudes who tried to kill them earlier, a few episodes ago. So Kovac is like, where the hell were you? He's like, well, I finally got this guy to tell me. And then Kovac just shoots him dead. And Elliot's like, well, I promised him he was going to live. Kovac is on like he's freaking out. He's on this like killing spree. He's pissed. Um, so meanwhile, he's pissed. He takes off. Elliot's following him, going back and forth with that, and Ortega with Abuelita, having these like personal talks. It's nice. You kind of see a different side of Ortega where she's calm and not being cranky or salty or just freaking out. Um, so from there, she tries to find Kovac, right? And oh, yeah, so he gets out, right? She's talking to Abuelita. She gets a call that there's this huge thing going on at the We Clinic or the Y Clinic. So she goes there with the police to investigate, and she sees the bloodbath. She sees the bloodbath, and she figures out that it was Kovac. Not only that, she figures out it was Kovac. She figures out it was Kovac because she finds his tracking device there, which he left for her, attached to a severed hand. And the severed hand basically was giving the middle finger, and it had the tracking device stuck to it. So now she knows that he knows, right? So what do I have here? I got Ortega basically goes to the Raven now, looking for Kovac, because she has the trackers. She's pissed. He's pissed that he was being tracked. She goes upstairs. He's in the shower, showering off a bloodbath. Literally showering off a bloodbath. It is a bloodbath, right? He gets out of the shower. She's like, what the heck, man? Like, what'd you do over there? She looks at the table, and there's Demi, the twins' head in like a champagne bucket on ice, right? So she was just like, what the heck, man? Like, you cut off his head? What is your problem? Now he confronts Ortega about him being in a cop's sleeve. So he's just like, first of all, you're tracking me and that's bullshit. Second of all, who's Riker? She's like, what are you talking about? Who's Riker? She's like, I don't know what you're talking about. So he kind of gets it out of her. She's like, well, it's someone I used to work with. He's like, that's it? You guys didn't have a relationship? I'm ad-libbing here because, whatever. So she's like, no, he was just like a coworker. So he's like, oh, okay, so you wouldn't mind if I destroy his body? She's like, no. So he takes a knife and starts cutting himself, right? And she's kind of like, so what? And then he puts the knife to his throat because, if he kills himself, he's just going to get re-sleeved by Bancroft into another body. He doesn't care, right? He doesn't want to be in this stupid body anyway. It's getting so much shit for it. So he's about to cut himself, and she's like, no, stop. I'll tell you everything. And she's got tears in her eyes, and you're just like, oh shit. Okay, she had something with this dude. She definitely had something with this dude. And then the episode ends on another cliffhanger. It's like a love cliffhanger, right? Love, murder, mystery cliffhanger. So that's episode 4. Like I said, get to this episode, and from here it definitely catapults you into the next ones where things get very interesting, because obviously now we find out that Kovac knows that he was somebody else named Riker, who was a cop who was set up. Okay. He now finds out that Ortega had something more than just being a partner or coworker, but a love interest, because she freaks out. So now he's going to start putting together that Bancroft, which we know already hates Ortega because apparently she botched the investigation of his murder. He must have brought back Riker's sleeve in Kovac to really piss off Ortega. And now we know why Ortega was so cranky the whole 4 episodes, right? Not bad. I like the religious stuff. I love the comparisons with gods and no gods, and just because you can live forever, that makes you a god, but is it moral? So I like the moral dilemmas. I like the post-apocalyptic stuff of the future, because only the rich people could afford their own clone bodies, and how the people who can't have to go into whatever used car body they can get. So I would suggest to stick with it. It's a good show. I've been reading some ratings and stuff around because it's out already. But I think in general people like it. It's an acquired taste, you know. Maybe these descriptions will help you like it more, and you'll just binge on it and watch. Because the sooner we get done with this, we'll go on to a next series or another Netflix type movie or series and go on with that. So I'm going to end this one here, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Gabe Agnel. I am your host here on the solo set for the 0DB podcast feed. Be sure to check out all the other episodes of the show and check out the other shows I do. I do the Headline Show with John Clark. We're currently doing the Halloween franchise now, which is pretty cool. Although we took a little detour to watch Big Trouble in Little China, so we have some video reactions to that, which is pretty cool. Claudia and I do After Dark, which is a great show that we do after our little monster goes to sleep. So it's a lot more like subdued, and we talk a lot lower and stuff because like he's sleeping in the other room. We do a little bit more modern films. Right now, we're trying to do Oscar-nominated and Oscar-winning films to be a little bit more relevant with what's going on right now. And that's it. So, subscribe here on YouTube. Also, you can listen to this show and the other shows on Apple Podcasts, Podomatic, and Stitcher. You could also subscribe on those, so every time there's a new episode that comes out, it just shows up in your inbox, which is great. 0dbpodcast.com is the main blog webpage where I put all the shows, all the social media stuff, all fun info, pictures, the whole deal. We got the Facebook page. We got the Instagram page. Facebook, it's 0DB Podcast. Instagram, it's at 0DB Podcast. Twitter me, which you can get sent out to anybody in our family here. The Twitter is at 0DB23. So thanks for watching and thanks for listening. And stay tuned for the next episode, which will be episode 5 of this Altered Carbon series here on Netflix. Okay, everybody. Have a great day and have a great week. And talk to you next time. Take care. Thanks.